Hi, this is Joe Bolen, and welcome to learningvisualbasic.net. Today we're going to look at how to print natively in visualbasic.net. Now before we get started, let's take a look at where our coding examples are at and where we can find out more information. Our main documentation for this video series is out at pastebin.com/u/jboh, and there you can go out and take a look at the code that I'm using in this series, and also you can download it and bring it into your own process of learning how to code your own text editor. In addition, the screen capture of the main part of the form is out in Imager, and you'll see that link to go to Imager to see the screen capture of the main form. And then finally, you can always go out to YouTube at Bolen Presents to learn more about the other visualbasic.net videos that I have out there, as well as follow this particular text editor part of our series. So you might want to pause your video at this point in time and write down these links so you can go out later and study about Visual Basics in terms of what I've done in this particular series. Well, let's go back into Visual Studio and take a look at our text editor. And you see I have the Windows Designer up at this point in time, and we have the text editor. And we're going to be focusing off the menu strip and also off the button here for the print. We're going to be focusing in the next couple of series videos on the print, the page setup, and the print preview of this text editor. Right now I'm going to do a general overview of the printing process. Now normally in visualbasic.net we have some other methods other than native printing. We can use the report viewer if we're printing something maybe from a database, or we can bring in a third-party utility, maybe use Crystal Reports to do printing. But we're going to use today just our native ability within visualbasic.net, and this text editor is a perfect place where we can learn how to code that kind of processing. So to do this, we need to bring in a special component called the PrintDocument. So I'm going to go to my toolbox, and I have already selected the printing part of the toolbox, and I'm going to bring the PrintDocument over. I can double click on it real quickly, I can drag it to my form, or I can take it right to the component tray where it'll end up. And now I have the PrintDocument 1 in my component tray. I'm just going to leave it under the name of PrintDocument 1. But what I'd like to draw your attention to are the events that are part of the PrintDocument 1 that we just brought in. The main default event is the print page, and the print page event fires for every page that we print. So if we had 3 pages, the print page event would fire 3 different times to print out those 3 pages. Now at the very beginning of the PrintDocument 1 print method, we'll fire off the begin print event. And there's where I can bring in information and capture it related to the printing of this document I'll be working on, and maybe based off of the information that comes in there, I'll do some changes and have different starting and ending locations of my printing. So this fires for every time we do the PrintDocument 1 print method, and it fires first as the beginning of the print process. At the end of the print process, we fire the end print method, and there's where we might do some cleanup of our variables that we've used through the printing process. And then we have the 4th event, which is query page settings, and this one fires every time before the print page event. So we have the begin print occurs, then we go to the query page setting event, then we go to the page print event, and we'll keep doing the query page setting and print page events over and over till we're done, and then finally we'll have the end print event occur. But the print page event is our main event for this process. Okay, let's take a look back at our menu strip, and we're going to look and we're going to concentrate on this print option off our menu strip, or also off the button of our tool strip. So I'm going to go into the code now. I'm going to make it a little bit bigger on that, and we're going to replace in our option here from our tool strip, we're going to change this now to do the printing. And all this takes is a print document 1, and we're using the print method. And that is all that's necessary for our option to fire off the print page event. But we have to have the print page event in there as well. Now, before I go a little further into this, I want to bring something to your attention. I can have a situation, though, where I do not have a printer defined, or I have some kind of I/O activity with printing. So we normally do not want to have this by itself with just a straight print document 1 print. We want to wrap this in a try-catch block so that if there are any errors that occur, we can capture them ahead of time and gracefully get out of the error. So I'm going to bring in some code I have, and we're going to replace our straight print method and put it in a try-catch. And there we go. So what I'm going to look at is if I have any problem printing, I'm going to look for an invalid printer exception, which is one of the errors that can happen with the print method. If I don't have a valid printer, then I want to capture that error. I want to then tell the user you don't have a valid printer, and allow them to gracefully exit out of the module, or out of this procedure. If I capture some other error, a general exception error that I don't know about, then once again I want to capture that error, tell the user about the error that we've captured, and allow a graceful ending of this procedure. So you want to wrap things around the try-catch area to protect the particular method we're using, because we are doing a I/O activity to the printer. We could have problems with our printer, so we want to have that wrapped into a try-catch block. Okay, let's go to the top of our code. And as I come up to the top, one of the things I've already done is I've imported the system drawing printing into our code to make it easier for us to code that area. We're actually painting our page with the system drawing events, and we're basically using the graphics ability of drawing to do our printing. So this is an important part we need to bring in to make it easier for us to code. Now let's go back to our design again, and remember that my system had in our print document these different events, of which the page print event is the main one. So if I double click on this, or come over here to page print and click on it, we'll generate the code for this particular event. So I'm going to just double click here on print page, and it'll take me back into my code where we capture and handle the print page event. Okay, so in here is where we actually code the area of our printing of the page. So let me bring in now some of the code that's necessary to print our page. I'm going to go back to my pre-done text and pull in some of that information. And let me scroll down here and capture it. There. And I'm going to pull it into here, and then we'll talk about what I just did. Okay, let me come back up to the top here where we begin our print page. One of the things I wanted to have in my page is a page number. And so I'm going to initialize the page number as an integer with the value of 1 for my first page. And I've defined it as static. Now, if you do not understand what this static reserved word does, is basically the page number will hold its value even after we leave this particular procedure. So when I come into the procedure again, whatever value I have for page number will have been retained, and I can continue on doing the page. So as I leave this particular procedure, I want to increment the page number, and then I'll have the, for example, page 2 being there when I come back in. So we always increment just before we leave on that, and by keeping it static, it doesn't lose its value. Otherwise, I'd have to define the page number as a class variable versus within the particular procedure we're working on. Well, I've talked to you about the page itself, and you'll see that I've defined a number of things: left margin, top margin, printable area width, and height. Well, let's take a look at why I'm defining those things. Let me bring back the screen. And what I'd like to show to you is I have a document here, and I'm going to try my best for you to see it. I have a header up here at the top in my margin of my page where I've given it a little title on that. Then I have my page number over here on the side with the, in this case, page 1 that I'm working on. And then I have the area defined around this red border as the printable area that I'm going to be printing in. And then each line I'm going to print inside that area, and I'm going to scroll down and print as many lines as I can fit into that little box that I defined. So you'll see down here at the bottom I stopped printing at the very end. Now I've used a very large font here so it's easier for you to see on the screen, but basically we're painting to our memory the information about what we're going to be printing, and then it prints out on the page. And we need to keep track of where we are on the page, and one of the things we'll be looking at is our coordinates of left and right margins. We'll look at the printing area that we have in here, and we'll keep track of that as we're printing the page. That is probably the most difficult part of the printing process, is defining where we're going to be printing our information. Okay, let's go back to our code. And you'll see here that I have the left margin defined, the top margin, and the width and height of the printable area. Also, I've defined especially where I'm going to be putting my header information. That's where I have my title and page number. And I've declared the fonts that I'm going to be working with in this one. And here I've declared the header font as Arial 14-point size. This makes it a little larger than normal. And because we're just starting out, and I'm going to make my detailed body part of my printing, the detailed font, I'm going to make it Tahoma, and I'm going to make it 24-point, which is a pretty good size printing, but it'll make easier for us to see as we process through this particular exercise. Now, I've also defined for the detailed printing of the body of the text, I've made the brush color the color navy on that. You can change this to different colors if you like. Later on, we're actually going to be using the color that we've selected in our text box for our default color of the detail. Versus hard coding a specific color in. That way, if I change my text box's color for color, that will become the color in our printing as well. Now, here's where we have to determine our printable area. And one of the things we can have is a situation where we're printing landscape or portrait. And normally we print portrait on that, so I'm going to focus your attention to this part of the code first. And what I'm basically finding out is if I am in portrait versus landscape, then I'm going to be coming into this section of the code. So I want to find the top margin, and I use, here's where I'm using the PrintDocument default page settings, .margins, .top, and .left to get that information for my page settings. Then I'm going to do some calculations, and to get the width, I'm going to take the full width of the page and then subtract the left and right margins from it, and that'll give me my width of the area within my page that I'm going to print. And the height from top to bottom, I'm going to take the top and the bottom off from the page size height, and that'll give me my area. So basically we want to print within the printable area width and height that we're working with. Now I've hard-coded the header to a position of 50, and it's an XY coordinates, and basically we're looking at the top left corner being the 0, 0 location of our document. So I'm coming over, in this case, 50 pixels over, or I should say points over, and also I'm going to be doing the taking the page width and coming in from the width for my right side for the header. Now for testing purposes, you saw in my illustration I had a nice big red rectangle around the area, and what I'm looking at is the margin area where I have my printable area, and I'm picking up brushes red, 3 points in size, and I'm drawing a rectangle, and I'm using the graphics. Remember, we brought in the import system drawing, printing part into it. We're actually using the graphics ability to draw that border. So this draws the border around my page. Later on, I'll turn this off, but it helps me initially get started. Then I'm going to set up a default title on that, and I just called it Text Editor Test Printing, and I put it into the variable header title. Later on, this will dynamically be set by the file that we're using. So this gives me a variable that I can work with later on as we adjust it for our actual final printing that we're going to be doing with our text editor. Then as we come in, initially I'm going to be dealing with this is looking at it as strictly a printing line by line. Later on we're going to look at wrapping it, and you'll see a lot more math in a sense involved to do that, but basically we want to find out how many lines on this page can we print. And so what I'm going to do is look at the printable area and height. I'm going to take my default font height, which is based up back here in the top. I had a default font on, or detailed font up to Homa 24 point. So it's going to take the height of that font, add a little bit of space to it to allow for a little space between each font, and then we're going to basically count out how many lines can we print in that printable area by doing this calculation. So this will give me number of lines, and as I change the type of font size that I'm using, this will dynamically change so I can have more or less lines per page. Okay, we've calculated now at this point the number of lines per page. Now we're ready to print the actual header, and this we talk about printing the header, the body, and the footer sections of a page. So in the header area is where we have the title, and we use the graphics drawString method to do that printing. Here we bring in the header title that I defined up above on that, and I bring in the header font size that I defined. In this case it was Arial 12 point on that. Let's see if I come back up here at the top, Arial 14 point, excuse me. And so we set that information in. We're going to use brushes black on that, and I'm going to position it to the X coordinate of, in this case I think it was 50, and I'm going to come down the Y axis 50 on that to print my header. Now this is one area that you might have to adjust as you might do something different in terms of font size to make it where you need to be. Then also I'm printing the word page with a space after it, then the page number, and the page number was an integer, so I needed a toString on that to make it into a string. So I'm concatenating these two together. I'm using my, once again, my header font size of 14 point Arial. I'm using black, and I'm locating it where I decided that I needed the right side of it. And this is the X coordinate, and once again this is the Y coordinate. So both of them are coming down the page 50 points on that, and then the other X coordinate chooses where it'll be left or right. So we print our header, title, and our page number. Then we come into the page body, and for this one I just created a very quick loop on that. It would be different for other things, but basically I wanted just to create some lines on our page. So I started out from using line from 0 to lines per page minus 1. That means I come up just a little bit off that bottom area. And what I'm doing then is printing out with the drawstring method this line, and then I'm putting the line number in. And since I'm starting out with 0, I increment it with an extra 1 after it. So it's line plus 1 to string of the document. So it'll say this is line 1 of the document, line 2 of the document, etc. I'm using the detailed font, and then also the detailed brush color that I chose. And I'm also using the rectangular position of this, and you'll see that I'm dynamically using the height of the line to find out, and basically I'm looking at just that line in terms of where I'm printing. And here is the sort of the math that goes with that. Basically I'm calculating where I'm coming down on that coordinates with the top margin plus the height of the font times the line number that I'm on. So as I go to line 2, I'll be a little bit farther down on the page, and as I go to line 3, I'll go down a little bit further. And so this will increase on the y coordinates on that. I'm still starting though over on the far left with the x coordinate here. Then I'm using the printable area, and then I'm using the detailed font height in there to define my rectangle. And then the format here was one I defined up above. Let me come back up to that area where I defined it. And let's see, that was defined right here on the format. And this is one that I think you really need to go out and look at MSDN to understand, to look at the string format. Here I'm using no wrap for this one, and if the line is too long, what I'm going to be doing is basically stripping off the end of the line and putting a couple of dots at the very end if the line is too big for the page. This is just a real rough one with no wrapping on it to print our document. Now, as I said, as we get finished with our printing the body, we want to increment our page number for the next time. And since this is a static variable, it'll hold it. So we're basically in this section by making page number 2. And then if we had some other things we were looking at, we would look at the page number, and we would set the has more page variable for true or false. This normally defaults to false if we don't code it, but basically I've got this in here. Basically I'm going to only be printing one page, so I'm not going to be printing any more than one page. So basically we're coming in, setting this to has more pages as false, and exiting out. So let's watch this actually do its thing. We should see a number of lines printed as we go through this loop. It should fit within the area because we're calculating the height on that. And let's let it run and see what happens. Okay, now I don't need to have in here this time a document because I'm basically hard coding our information and we're not reading from a file. So I'll just go up to File, Print, and hit the print, and you saw it far off. Now I have attached a PDF driver, so I'm just going to go to that and allow it to save that, and I'm going to overwrite it, and you'll see this is my document that I just printed. Here was my header information, my page number. This was my area around the document, and then here are each of the lines. Now I don't think I have that quite scaled right for you to see it, but that'll give you an idea of what we're doing here. And you saw it knew to calculate based off of the height of the font that I should have 23 different lines to fit in this area. Well, let's do this again. Let's change the font size to make it smaller, and we'll see the difference on this run. So let me stop this. We'll come back in. And I'm going to change that detailed font size from 24 to a more normal 12 point. So I'm going to hit 12 point there. And let's run it this time. Once again, I'll hit File, Print. It saw it print and went to my PDF driver. And I'm going to save this, overwrite it. And you'll see now my font size is smaller. I've changed it to half its size. It was 24 point, now it's down to 12 point. And you saw that I now have 45 lines that I printed out to this document. Now, if we had coded this for other pages, we would have more pages. But I wanted to give you an example. Basically, we're creating a painting of our page. We're painting in our header, and we have to have the X, Y coordinates. So we're coming, in terms of our X coordinate, we're coming over so far, and then we're coming down with our Y coordinate to get our header. And similarly, we're coming over here for the page number, and we're coming over so many from this location 00 over to here and then down. In this case, we came down 50 points on each one. And then we coded the rectangle around here, and this was the area that we're going to be printing in. And then I came down and we wrote each line as we went through our countered loop in our processing. So that gives you a quick overview of what we did. There is some calculations involved, and as we go into the actual code that will end up in our text editor, you'll see how we use the landscape part and as well as the portrait, because we're going to be able to print both ways. Right now it's just defaulting to portrait. We're going to turn off the little red border around our document. We won't want that anymore, but we can turn it on to check that we're printing within our margins. And we'll also want to dynamically bring in our header, and we'll want to deal with word wrapping. And we'll do it a little bit differently. When we deal with word wrapping, we're going to be looking not at a line to be printed, but all the characters that we want to print in that area. So it's a little bit different kind of calculation we use to get the characters that we can print in that area. We keep track of where we are in our document to print more pages. We'll increment our page number, and we'll set accordingly our has more pages to true or false to do our printing. Well, that gets us underway. We're learning how to do printing. Important things are we bring in the print document component into our application. It goes to the component tray. There are 4 basic events associated with the print document. There's the page print event, which is the default event that will fire for every page. Then we have the begin print and end print that occur. Begin, of course, fires for the first time before we start printing, and the end print fires at the very end of our printing. And then we have query print settings that occurs just before we do a page print, so we can capture any changes we might want. Now, we do not have to code all those events into our program. You saw that all I had in this particular one was the page print event, and then I had my method of the print document 1 print method that started off the process. I also coded that print document 1 print method within a try-catch block to make certain that if there were any errors related to a printer, for example, if I didn't have a printer attached to my system, or I had an I/O activity error or something, I'd catch those with a try-catch block of error catching and present that to the user so they'd be aware of what happened. Maybe all they needed to do was turn on the printer or set a default printer, and then they could go back and print. But we want to catch that error and not have our program stop and end. So one of the important things to remember is when we're doing I/O activities, file activities, print activities, we want to code that within a try-catch block to take care of it. So you get a little idea of the overview of the printing process. It's a little bit more complex than some things we do in Visual Basic. We have to code and have locations for where we're printing everything and place it specifically in those locations. We're printing and painting that page in a sense, and then sending it out to the printer. Well, we're going to look at more detail about our bringing in and working with the file in our next series. We're going to also bring in the print preview and the page setup components into our text editor so we can give the user more control and flexibility over what and how they want to print their document. So stay tuned. Keep out in your hands dirty in the code. Go out to pastebin.com and look at the code that I have for this video's series and learn about that code by going out to MSDN and studying the code, the exceptions that a code could have occur in a method, and also understand how we can code different methods related to some part of our code. One of the important things to remember is it doesn't come easy. We have to work at learning a little bit, but once we get that under our belts, we can always go back out to Microsoft Development Network and other things out on the internet to help us understand how to do a task. But we need to get our basic understanding, and the only way we can do that is to do it ourselves, try it out, and also go out to the site where we understand about that code to learn about it. So until next time, take care and keep coding.